If we can all be seated, the meeting's about to start. So, good afternoon and welcome members of the public, officers and members of the committee to South Kesteven District Council Planning Committee. Today, the 7th of November 2024, and the time is 1 p.m. I'm Councillor Charmaine Morgan, Chairman of Planning, and I will be chairing this meeting today. Just some housekeeping matters. First of all, fire drill. I'm not aware of any fire drill taking place today, so if the alarm does sound, then please follow the instructions which will be provided by our fire warden, Amy Pride, who's sitting on the end here. You would please vacate the building via the nearest fire exit or central stairwell. So there is a fire exit in that corner there behind you and the central stairwell. The meeting place is outside on the front on St Peter's Hill Green. Can everyone ensure you have turned off your mobile phones or switched them on to silent? Thank you. Please be aware this meeting is being recorded and it's also being live streamed via the public on South Kesteven website. Can you please ensure your microphones are turned off when not speaking? And I'll just that particularly applies also to our public speakers when you're over there. And please ensure you do not place your mobile phones near a microphone to avoid any feedback. And today I'd like to welcome Councillor Phil Dilks, Cabinet Member for Planning. We also have with us today the Assistant Director of Planning, Emma Whittaker, Development Manager, Phil Jordan, Principal Planning Officer, Adam Murray, Principal Planning Officer, Kevin Cartwright, and Planning Officer, Venetia Ross Gilmore. For legal services, we're joined online today by Paul Reeves. And from Democratic Services, we have Amy Pride, who is also our fire warden. Public speakers and ward councillors, please be aware you will have 3 minutes to speak and you will be advised when you have 30 seconds left. You may then finish your sentence, but not another paragraph. At this point, I would like to extend apologies to those public speakers who are here for the second time because you are unfortunately unable to speak on the 17th of October. Your cases were not then heard, so again, apologies to you for that. And I was just about to ask Emma to read out our list of speakers, but she's just probably having a drink. Just to clarify that the order in which the speakers are read out will be the order in which you will be called, just to give you a heads up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies, I had a slight tickle in my throat. So in terms of public speaking today, we've got several across the different applications. So agenda item 4, which is application reference S24/0986 at Autumn Business Park Centre in Dysart Road, Grantham. We've got the applicant, Oliver Eves, speaking. Then on item 5, which is application reference S24/1180, which is at the car park, Station Road in Stamford. We've got Councillor Richard Cleaver here as portfolio holder, and we've also got a representative of the applicant, Mr Gareth Dawkins, who's here to answer questions, should there be any. In relation to agenda items 6A and 6B, these are the two details relating to conditions at Rectory Farm, and just to clarify on your agenda, they are listed as 6A and 6B, and then in the papers they're listed as 6 and 7, so we'll just clarify that as we go through. But they are applications S24/1481 and S24/1842. We have got the applicant, Rob Thorley, who is speaking on behalf of Justin, and he'll be accompanied by Jonathan Gimblett on behalf of Vistry Homes if there's any technical questions to support. Then in relation to applications 7A and 7B, again on Rectory Farm, and these are application references S24/1442 and S24/1443. We have a statement to be read out on behalf of District Councillor Paul Martin and Councillor Gareth Knight's here as well to speak. We've got a resident, Roger Graves, speaking against the application, and again we've got the applicant, Mike Walker from Vistry, supported by Chris Holloway, to speak as well. And that's it. No speakers I can confirm for agenda item 8 relating to the trees matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We now go on to the main agenda item 1. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillors Penny Milnes and Harish Bisnausing. Councillor Max Sawyer is substituting for Harish today. Thank you.
Thank you for that. For item 2, do we have any disclosures of interests for consideration? No. If you believe you do have during the meeting, then please just inform us then. I have to make a declaration. With regards to item 5 of the agenda, S241180, car park at Stamford, and agenda item 10, S241620, the tree works at St Wolfram's in Grantham. I will make a declaration on behalf of all members that whilst it's acknowledged the applicant is the council, this will not affect how members of the planning committee determine the application. All members have been trained and will determine the application in accordance with their planning training and with an open mind. Any member who does not feel that they are open-minded to determine the application today should make a declaration to that effect and not vote on the application. So we'll now move to item 3, which was minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of October. These are available on an agenda supplement paper. Can I just check, have you all had an opportunity to check those minutes and read those minutes? So you don't need a recess to do that. That's lovely. In that case, could I have someone propose the minutes, please? Councillor Sawyer, thank you. And would anyone like to second, please? Councillor Trotter, thank you. That's lovely. So if we can have a vote for all those in favour of the minutes, please raise your hands. That's unanimous, thank you. So we will now move on to agenda item 4, which is on page 5 of our papers, and this item will be presented by our officer Kevin Cartwright. So this is application reference S240986, which is the demolition of existing building, construction of 3 commercial units, and associated car parking, Autumn Business Park, Business Centre, Dysart Road, Grantham. Thank you. I'll now hand over to our officer to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as you say, the application is at Autumn Business Park on Dysart Road, Grantham. I think the key issues in relation to the proposal are the principle of the development, amenity impacts, impact on the character and appearance of the area, and highway safety. Then we've got the application site, so we've got the red line around the application site itself, and obviously blue line around other land within the control of the applicant, that being the remainder of the business part. And we've just got an aerial photograph just for context. So there we go, that's the existing site. The proposal relates to the demolition of the building that we can see running along the frontage of the site. So an existing office building that would be demolished to facilitate the development. And that would be the proposal, as we can see there, 3 trade counter units at the back of the site, with the parking and turning at the front. And we've got some elevational details of the proposal. And just the footprint showing the 3 individual units. And we've just got some photographs just for context, again, just along the frontage of the site, showing the existing office building on the first photograph, then looking sort of to the north of the site, showing the adjacent terrace properties. And then the photograph at the bottom is just a photograph down the back of the existing office building that would be demolished. And we just got a Google Street View image of the building that would be demolished along Dysart Road there. So the principle of development, consider it to be acceptable in so much that it's a logical development within the designated employment site. I think it's an appropriate use in keeping with Alton Park. In relation to amenity, as we can see, there's adequate separation to the adjacent residential properties. In fact, the proposal would result in the new build being further away from the terrace properties than the current office building. There's parking and turning to the frontage of the site. Again, this would be away from the residential properties. And there are conditions proposed in relation to delivery hours and the delivery management plan. The proposal is considered to be a sympathetic design building that would be in keeping with the character and appearance of the existing industrial and commercial buildings on the site. From a highway safety perspective, it would utilise the existing access point that would serve this site and the remainder of Alton Park. There are two existing vehicle accesses currently along the frontage of Dysart Road. They would be closed off as part of this permission, so there would just be that single point of access. That's covered by condition 4. It's considered as adequate parking and turning within the site. This is supported by the fact there's no objection from the Highway Authority. The reason why the application is before us today is solely on the basis that it's to secure the developer contributions in relation to highway improvements for existing pedestrian points along Dysart Road. That's a contribution of £30,000. There's also cycle storage and pedestrian connectivity around the frontage of the site. Pedestrian access to the site would be from, there's a point along Dysart Road separate from the vehicle access. The recommendation is for approval to authorise the Assistant Director to grant planning permission subject to the completion of the Section 106 legal agreement and the conditions in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We will now go to our public speaker. So if Oliver Eves would like to come forward, please. Thank you. And you will have 3 minutes to speak and you'll be given a 30-second warning. And thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members, for the opportunity to speak. I'm Oliver Eves, Associate Director at NGL Consulting, and here to speak in support of the application, Agenda Item 6, which refers to the proposed development at Alton Park Industrial Estate, Dysart Road. I'd first like to thank officers for their communication and diligence throughout the application process. We have worked proactively with them and fully endorse their recommendation. The site comprises the existing Alton Park Business Centre, located in the southwestern corner of Alton Park Industrial Estate, which fronts onto Dysart Road. The proposals are for the demolition of the existing Alton Park Business Centre and the construction of one building split into 3 trade counter units. The existing use of the site as a business centre is surplus to the industrial use of the estate. Furthermore, the business centre is currently circa 25% vacant. Despite efforts to enhance occupancy rates through investment, the centre ultimately doesn't align with the broader industrial purpose of the estate and therefore represents an opportunity to redevelop to provide more desirable floor space. Paloma Capital has actively engaged with South Kesteven District Council throughout the application process, incorporating their feedback from pre-application discussions. Officers have confirmed that the principle of development in this location is considered to be acceptable, as the site is protected as a protected employment area where proposals for use class B2 and B8 will be supported. As outlined in the committee report, there will be adequate separation distance between the proposed units and residential properties to the west of the site to ensure that there would not be any significant impact on amenity of the neighbouring occupiers in the form of noise and disturbance, overlooking, loss of privacy or overshadowing. The proposed parking and access arrangements for the scheme also present a betterment to the existing arrangement, as vehicles would no longer enter the site adjacent to the residential properties. All of the matters, including noise, lighting, drainage and highways, are addressed, with no objections from statutory consultees. Overall, the proposed scheme will contribute to regenerating the site, and the proposed trade counter units are well suited to the specific industrial context and composition of the wider Alton Park Industrial Estate. Overall, we consider that the proposal represents a beneficial addition to the local area and economy. We support the conclusions set out in the committee report and respectfully request members follow the clear and robust officer recommendation to approve this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for our speaker? Councillor Wood.
Thank you. I'll talk to the microphone as well. That's all right. Right. Thank you for that. Yeah. No problems. I just noticed, was it you queried the contribution initially, but you wanted a breakdown? You've obviously looked at the breakdown, and I assume now you're happy with the contribution. And why did you just query it because you wanted a breakdown, or did you think it was too expensive?
So I think when we first received the correspondence from Highways, it was just a figure that was cited. It didn't go into detail in terms of what we would actually be mitigating, and I think obviously for our client ultimately they wanted to understand fully where their money would be going to. I think it's contributing towards improvements to 7 crossings in the vicinity of the site. So once we were aware of what that was going towards, I think within our initial transport statement we didn't shy away from the fact that we thought that there probably needed to be some enhancements for pedestrian movement in this area anyway. So it was more just a clarification as much as anything.
Thank you. Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. Could you just clarify, please, second paragraph of 10.8 on page 14?
It might be better if our case officer responds to that question.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just in relation to if, for whatever reason, the Section 106 contribution isn't agreed on and the agreement isn't signed within an appropriate period of time. It's just to stop the application just sitting sort of in limbo on our books. So it's just also to make people keep talking to each other and complete the agreement. Otherwise, we'd potentially be in a position where we'd have to bring the application back to you to get a different recommendation. So we put the 2 recommendations subject to completion of the agreement and a refusal if it doesn't get completed.
Thank you. It was just that the wording didn't make it clear. It's a what if. It reads as though it's a statement.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions? No? In that case, I have got one for you. I'm sure you will be aware that we've had a number of highways alterations to Dysart Road, which have quite significantly affected the road. I'm mindful that we're talking about a demolition plan here and replacement. Can you just explain what arrangements are in place with highways and other parties to ensure the minimal disruption in the area?
Yeah, so there is conditions in place to secure construction management plans, which will have to go in front of the council for determination through condition discharge. So there will be conversations that will be had with your highways officers in respect of the logistics of the construction and demolition process.
Thank you very much. Thank you. In that case, I think you may leave. Thank you very much. So, do any of our members have any questions for our officer or wish to debate this proposal? No? Oh, Councillor Harrison.
Chair, no, for me, I don't need to debate this. I think it's brilliant knowing what's there, the massive improvement on all this, the appearance and everything else, the improving the access, improving the drainage, so we're actually going to be putting less strain on drainage by the permeable pavements that these guys are putting in. I'm of a mind to propose that we do this, so please accept that as my proposal.
Thank you very much. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Crawford?
Thank you. You put me to the post. I have no issues with this. It's going on a brownfield site. It's replacing something that isn't in use. It's going to make more employment. I'm happy to recommend with all the recommendations, or second with all the recommendations. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, I agree. I believe it's an enhancement actually to the area, especially actually to see some greenery put in. So in that case, oh sorry, Councillor Bird.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it certainly does appear to be a much greater improvement. I might have missed it, but is there any proposal for solar panels and electric charging points and any other sort of appropriate infrastructure?
Mr. Cartwright.
Thank you, Chair. There's no solar panels as such, but there is. It's obviously a town centre, like a sustainable location. There are cycle storage proposed, so there's no specific solar panels or anything like that. No.
Yes, under current legislation, it's not a specific requirement of new development, though I know that is generally the feeling that for many people that perhaps in future it should be. Thank you very much. In that case, what we'll do is now go to the vote. So all those in favour to grant the planning permission, subject to conditions, and completion of Section 106 agreement. Everyone's beaten me to it. Thank you. And that's unanimous. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. So just, I note that Councillor Smith has arrived. Thank you. We're now moving to agenda item 5, which is on page 21 of our papers. And this will be presented by Officer Venetia Gilmore-Ross. And this is application reference S241180. It's the construction of an extension to the existing car park comprising of 146 bays. And as I mentioned before, this property is owned by South Kesteven District Council. If you could please now do your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is for the construction of an extension to an existing car park, and it will be comprised of 146 parking bays, including 11 accessible bays and 8 EV charging bays. The site is located to the southwest of the existing car park on Wothorpe Road and east of the junior school and nursery school in the town of Stamford. It's an existing facility serving this part of Stamford and is operated by the council. The site is a brownfields land site and within the centre of Stamford. It's served by an existing access of Station Road, Wothorpe Road. The existing car park has 275 bays and 24 accessible parking bays. And the application is vacant and has been for some time and was formerly the outdoor cattle market, and the site will be accessed via the existing car park. A picture for context. The development proposal is for an extension to the car park that's there at the moment, taking access from the existing access to the car park and then providing a secondary exit in the southwestern end of the site. This will provide additional parking bays, including accessible bays, and 8 EV charging bays. And there's currently 4 EV charging bays in the existing car park. The car park would be surfaced in tarmac, and there would be new hedgerow planting on the southwestern boundary, additional planting within the site, and planting on the northern boundary, and existing boundary walls would be retained and would also be repaired. So the key considerations: The application is a vacant brownfield site. It's adjacent to the existing car park use, would provide further public parking to meet demand, particularly on busy days such as market days, and it would also provide further EV charging points for the town. There's adequate separation from the conservation area, there would be no harm to heritage assets. It retains the remaining historic fabric, i.e. the boundary walls to the north of the site, and there would be improvements to these boundary walls, including minor repairs and the rebuilding work. There's two additional points that you may have come across with the report. The Conservation Officer suggested incorporating the cobblestone paving and made this recommendation to enhance the quality of the development, but this is not thought to be an issue in terms of harm to the conservation area. The applicant advised this was not possible due to issues with providing level and even access to the site and access for all users. But this issue is considered to be acceptable without the retention of the cobblestone and overall acceptable on heritage grounds. The second additional point is on ecology. This site is liable for biodiversity net gain. There will be a 62% increase in habitat units and 597% increase in hedgerow units, taking into account the planting within the car park and buffer areas within the car park, the new hedgerow, and the retention of the existing hedgerow and additional planting. Therefore, the recommendation is for the Assistant Director of Planning and Growth to grant planning permission subject to conditions.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. If we can please have Councillor Richard Cleaver come forward, who is the SK portfolio holder for property and public engagement. And I understand that you're being supported by Gareth Dawkins, who will be available in case there are any questions. Thank you. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and we'll give you a 30-second warning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This site has not been used for several years and has laid vacant since October 2010. It's a vacant brownfield site owned by SKDC, and it is entirely appropriate that it be put to good use for public benefit. The redevelopment of the site to provide further public car parking will provide wider benefits to the public, including the provision of additional parking spaces to meet public demand and provide much-needed additional EV charging points for Stamford. The use is considered appropriate in this location without conflict with the surrounding uses of car parking, educational and residential. The provision of additional car parking will support the economic function of the town centre and businesses in the area. The redevelopment of the site to provide additional car parking is considered to be acceptable in principle, being an infill opportunity within Stamford and having been a vacant brownfield site for over a decade. The site has a dilapidated character, overgrown and unkempt. The proposal would ensure the provision of new public realm, providing additional long-stay car parking. The proposal ensures a suitable layout and design for the site and is considered to enhance the character and appearance of the area, providing a reuse of this site. The proposal includes the retention of hedging and vegetation on the boundary of the site, as well as a new area of planting. The soft landscaping will provide a more pleasant, verdant character to the hard landscaped car parking areas. I'm sure members of the committee will be aware of recent and current applications for new housing developments in Stamford, and will often hear members of the public asking, why don't they ever put the additional infrastructure in before the new houses are built? Well, here we have an example of SKDC seeking to do just that, and I therefore hope the committee will support the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Councillor Cleaver? Councillor Wood?
Councillor Cleaver, yeah, it just seems a very sensible suggestion, but I wonder, why does Stamford Town Council want to delay it? Do they do another survey? Reading the report, there must be more in it what they've said. I get the impression they want to delay this until you've done a full survey, but that doesn't quite make sense to me. Do you know why they want to delay it?
Can I just say that because that's specifically directed regarding the town council, that may not be an appropriate question for Councillor Cleaver to answer unless he actually does know the answer, in which case he's welcome to share it.
I was simply going to say that I can't obviously speak on behalf of the town council, and I don't quite understand their logic either. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you. In response to Councillor Wood there, it does actually state in the document what their reasons are in 2 or 3 places. And I would like something from Emma, possibly, whether that is a consideration that we should take into account or not.
Officers' views, you've got enough information on which to make the decision today. There's always going to be scenarios in planning whereby could we have a bit more, what if something else happens? But we have to make the decision in a timely fashion based on what we know today. If you don't feel you've got enough information, that's a different question. But certainly as officers, we feel confident we've got enough information. Thank you.
Councillor Sawyer.
Thank you, Chairman. As a member of Stamford Town Council, I don't understand it either. As far as I'm concerned, the sooner the better. Stamford really needs this. Let's get it done.
Thank you. We're just in danger of going from questions to our speaker into actually discussing the case. Do we have any more specific questions for Councillor Cleaver? No, that's fine. Thank you. And in that case, I heard somebody say the word proposal. Councillor Sawyer, did you want to treat your statement as a proposal, or do we want to have a bit more debate?
Please treat it as a proposal, Chairman.
That's fine. And Councillor Johnson picked Councillor Crawford. So, Councillor Johnson, you're seconding this. Do we have any more comments that wish to be made? No. In that case, if we would like to go forward to the vote. So the vote is to grant permission subject to conditions. Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you. If we can now move on to the next agenda item. So just to clarify, these are labelled in the main index as agenda items 6A, and we're going to treat items 6A and 6B together. However, when it comes to voting, we will separate when it comes to voting. So Adam Murray will be doing a presentation to us. So this is regarding application references S241481 and S211482, which is submission of details reserved by condition 24 off-site highways works relating to planning permission S16 and 2816, and also the same again for S16 2819. And I'll now hand over to our officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. Yes, as you say, these two applications are applications for submission of details reserved by condition 24 of two planning permissions which relate to phase 1 at the Rectory Farm development on Barrowby Road in Grantham. And the applications have been referred to committee at the discretion of the Assistant Director of Planning. So just for context, the site comprises of the two parcels of phase 1 of the Rectory Farm development at the northwestern edge of Grantham. The site benefits from full planning permission for a total of 448 dwellings, which was granted in January 2023. That consists of 228 dwellings on the eastern parcel, which is being delivered by Vistry Partnerships, and 220 dwellings on the western parcel, which is being delivered by Gelson Homes. Works have commenced on site and construction of the dwellings fronting onto Barrybury Road are now well advanced. Land to the north of the Phase 1 parcels has a resolution to grant outline planning permission for up to 400 dwellings, and land to the east comprises of the Poplar Farm development. So in terms of the current applications in front of you, as approved, condition 24 is on the screen in front of you, which requires a scheme of junction improvement works to the A1, A52 junction to the west of the site. The key part of that wording in terms of the condition is that it refers to some specified high-level design schemes within the condition, but also allows for any other alternative scheme providing the same mitigation that may be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. And that's what the current scheme is an alternative scheme providing the same level of mitigation. So the two drawings referred to in the actual condition are, the first one is on the screen here, which is essentially a signalisation of that junction, and then separate filter lanes from the A1 slip road and then on the A52 in both directions. The two schemes referred to within the condition are different schemes depending on whether the Grantham Designer Outlet Village is developed as well, or one without that situation where it's just looking at the development itself. In terms of the proposal in front of you, the revised scheme, it is broadly on the same principles as previously approved in terms of it is still a signalised junction. The revision to the scheme is a result of continued engagement between the two developers and Links County Council Highways team and National Highways in preparing the detailed design for their technical approval processes. The actual changes are necessary to increase the queuing filter lanes on the westbound approach to the junction, and then to allow for a slight realignment to reduce impact on the existing embankment to the southwest corner. But as I say, fundamentally, the actual junction improvement is essentially the same scheme as previously considered. So in terms of the actual assessment of the scheme, the key thing and the key matter to consider is whether the actual revised design would provide the same level of mitigation as those previous high-level designs. In that sense, and as set out within your main report, both National Highways and Lincolnshire County Council Highways have raised no objections and have confirmed that in their professional assessment, the revised scheme is the same level of mitigation. So therefore, the recommendation, as I say, there's two recommendations to reflect those two applications. So recommendation 1 is to authorise the Assistant Director to approve the details submitted pursuant to Condition 24 of Permission S162816. And then recommendation 2 to committee is to authorise the Assistant Director to approve the details submitted pursuant to Condition 24 of Permission S162819. And I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have one public speaker on this, which is the applicant. Actually, can I just clarify what your name is?
Chairman, I believe it's the applicant, Mr Rob Thorley, and he's supported by Jonathan Gimblett. Should there be any technical questions that he might be able to answer.
Thank you for the clarity. So if Mr Rob Thorley would like to come forward, the Land and Planning Director of Gelson. Thank you. With Jonathan Gimblett. And you will have 3 minutes to speak if you'd just like to indicate when you're ready, and you'll be given a 30-second warning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And good afternoon, members. My name is Rob Thorley. I'm the Land and Planning Director for Gelson Homes. I'm, however, speaking to you on this application and the one that follows, so 6A and 6B, on behalf of both Vistry Homes and Gelson Homes. So firstly, thank you for allowing me the time to speak to you this afternoon. Through the course of this committee, you're going to hear about multiple applications relating to the Rectory Farm site. But firstly, we are addressing the application to vary the approved A1, A52 junction designs. By way of background, in January 2023, full planning permission was granted for Phase 1 of Rectory Farm. The first phase totals 448 homes to be delivered jointly by Vistry and Gelson. As part of the planning application, it was identified that improvements were needed to the A1 junctions. Indeed, the need for improvements to the junctions had previously been identified as part of the consideration of the Grantham Design Outlet Village, and conditions were also attached to that consent, preventing its opening until a scheme of improvement work had been carried out. Unfortunately, as you're no doubt aware, the Designer Outlet Village has not progressed, leaving Vistry and Gelson with the task of implementing the junction works. It's important to note that a substantial amount of work had already been done by the promoters of the Designer Outlet Village in respect of the junction improvements, and a scheme had already been drawn up and agreed in principle with National Highways. At the time that the Gelson and Vistry schemes were approved, it was therefore not unreasonably assumed that the schemes already prepared for the Designer Outlet Village could form the basis for the mitigation works, and it was therefore a slightly revised version of this plan that was included within the planning application permissions. However, once detailed discussions had commenced with National Highways, it became clear that National Highways were no longer content with the drawings previously prepared, and that a substantial redesign was going to be required. As a consequence, the scheme has evolved considerably and no longer reflects the scheme included in the planning permission conditions. And the case officer has taken you through that on screen, which is very helpful. The application for Vistry and the companion one that follows for Gelson simply seek to update the plans referenced in the planning conditions to this new design. It is, however, an important step in the programme of getting these junctions delivered. The work that we've undertaken demonstrates the time and commitment that Vistry and Gelson and their respective design teams and consultants have invested into developing what is essentially a brand new junction design from that previously agreed. I would therefore encourage members to support these applications to allow the detailed design work to continue towards securing the required technical approvals and legal consents for the highway works and subsequently their implementation to start on site as soon as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions at all? No? Thank you very much. Thank you. So we will now go forward into our combined questions of officer and debate. If anybody would like to say anything, or do we want to make a proposal? Councillor Crawford.
Thank you. As I am not a highways expert, but we do have them with LCC and National Highways. They have said that they have got no issues with that. They are the technical people. For me, if they are happy with it, I can't see that how I could go against that, so I would be happy to propose. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford. Councillor Harrison? Thank you very much. Does anybody want to add any further comment? Councillor Bellamy?
My only comment is that obviously I think this came to committee before, didn't it? And when the original junction, when Highways had an objection to it, was that the one, I think?
Adam, would you like to answer that question?
Councillor Bellamy, I think you might be getting slightly ahead of yourself. That's the next two applications on the agenda.
What we don't want is to hold up our allocated sites, bearing in mind the hold-ups that we've had on some of the major projects around Grantham, and in the current climate, like I say, we need to get cracking on these allocated sites to deliver our housing target for the year, or for the next 5 years, in fact. So I'm quite happy to vote for this.
Thank you. I would just add, actually, that I think, regardless almost of development, significant improvement to that junction area is required. So it's very welcome. So in that case, if I could ask all those in favour, please raise your hands. Oh, sorry, I ought to clarify. As I said before, we were having two votes. So this is to authorise the Assistant Director, Planning and Growth, to approve the details submitted pursuant to Condition 24 of Planning Permission, first of all, S16 2816.
Can I just clarify that they were moving and seconding for both?
And will you be moving and seconding for both Councillor Crawford and Councillor Harrison? Yes, that's confirmed. Thank you. So all those in favour of S16 2816, that is unanimous. Thank you. And rather than repeat myself, hopefully you've got the previous point regarding the permission. So approved details submitted pursuant to condition 24, this time planning permission S162819. All those please in favour, please raise your hands. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. So that has been approved. So we are now moving forward. It's relating to the same overall development, the land at Rectory Farm. We are looking at agenda items 7A and 7B. They're on page 63 and page 77 of the agenda papers retrospectively. They have been labelled agenda item 8 and agenda item 9, and we will, it's proposed we do the same again, that we'll listen to those jointly, but we will vote separately at the end of the debate. So if I could ask our Officer Adam Murray to go through. So we're looking at S24-142 and S24-1443, which is a Section 73 application to vary conditions 24 of the off-site highways works planning permission, and Section 73 application to vary conditions, again, planning permission S162819 and S240140. Thank you.
Thank you again, Chair. So yes, this application is a Section 73 application to vary condition 24, and again it relates to Phase 1 at Rectory Farm on Barrowby Road, and again these applications have been referred to committee at the discretion of the Assistant Director of Planning. Now, a Section 73 application can only consider actually the conditions to which planning permission should be granted, so we can't revisit anything in terms of the principle of development. We can only consider matters relevant to the condition in question. And as we've just explained, condition 24 relates to a scheme of junction improvement works at the A1-A52 junction. Now, as approved, condition 24 requires that scheme of improvements to be completed prior to any dwellings being occupied. The current application seeks to vary that condition to allow for occupation of up to 50 dwellings in total before those junction improvements are completed. So that would be split between 30 dwellings on the Vistry development, which is the application reference S162816, and 20 dwellings on the Gelston development, which is S162819. Now, members may recall that we have had a previous application to vary this condition, which related solely to the Vistry application that was considered by committee earlier this year. That sought to vary the condition to allow for 150 occupations on that site, which was refused by this committee and is currently going through appeal. In terms of this revised scheme, though, for 50 dwellings to be occupied, National Highways have raised no objections. They have stated that the additional vehicular movements resulting from the occupation of 50 dwellings before the improvements are complete would not have a material impact on the operation of that junction. And likewise, Lincolnshire County Council Highways have raised no objections to the proposed works as well. Now, we're aware that members have been sent a briefing note by the applicants in advance of the committee and following the publication of the main committee report. Just to be clear, it's our assessment that that does not raise any additional information. It simply reaffirms the matters that have been considered within the officer report, so it doesn't change the recommendation. And then in terms of the recommendation in front of you, it is that the scheme accords the development plan as a whole, so there's no considerations to indicate permission should be withheld. And the recommendation is to authorise the Assistant Director to grant planning permission subject to conditions. One thing just to be clear for members on that point is that condition 11 in both of the applications has wording underlined within it, which is the reference to the scheme of mitigation that members have just considered and accepted. So if members resolve to approve or to grant permission on these two applications, it would include that wording underlined to ensure it refers to that updated scheme. So just hand back to you at that point, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have a number of speakers on this application. I understand we have a statement also to be read out from Councillor Paul Martin. So if we do the statement first, if that's okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. To the SKDC Planning Committee, the junction of the A1-A52 is a busy and dangerous access to and from the A1. With no confirmed completion date for the required junction improvements, we have to consider the impact of the Poplar Farm development, which is next to this Rectory Farm development. Poplar Farm has been dormant for some years, however the developer has started to plan for new homes and wishes to commence very shortly. They could build hundreds of extra homes based on their granted permissions. LCC Highways does see an issue with adding additional completed homes to the already granted permissions. I simply do not see how we can grant permission for any further pressure to that junction whilst this developer cannot confirm a future projected completion date for the junction improvements, if indeed they actually intend to do so. It should be noted that Lincolnshire County Council Highways have provided a document, LCC position statement, to the Council. This clearly states in section 4.3, any additional traffic from the 150 dwellings would exacerbate this situation and cause further risk on the highway network. The original drawings for upgrading this junction were prepared by developers in 2020 and the applications went to committee and were approved in April 22, subject to a section 106 agreement which was signed in January 23. The developers have therefore known of the need for this junction improvements for several years. Grantham also has the 460 new home Manthorpe Chase development already building, plus permissions for various other additional homes. With no guarantee of junction improvements even starting and with two major development sites gearing up for new housing delivery, in addition to the Rectory Farm site, I do not believe we should risk a single resident's life in order to satisfy the financial benefits to a housing developer. If they want to sell their new homes, they need to commit to the junction and upgrade it as soon as possible for the benefit of the town. In conclusion, I do not believe that the risk of a serious life-threatening accident justifies granting these permissions on the two applications at this present time. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We can now ask Councillor Gareth Knight if you'd like to come forward and speak, please. Yeah, am I correct that you are the ward councillor for this area?
For Barby Gate, which borders the site.
Thank you for that clarification. And you'll have 3 minutes if you just want to let us know when you're ready and a 30-second warning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to speak on these applications. This directly affects my ward, which does border the site. Councillors Bosworth, Leadenham and Whittington have also asked for their names to be added to this statement as they give it their full support as well. Just as a reminder, this site does actually affect those three wards, Beaver Ward, Arnoldfield Ward and Barby Gate. It's quite a confusing boundary. A few months ago, this committee voted unanimously to reject the application by the developers to change this planning condition. This was the right thing to do and was warmly welcomed by residents. Putting aside the laughable idea that 50 houses will only result in 11 more vehicle movements to an already congested junction, the developers and their agents are failing to consider the wider context of the developments across this quadrant of the town, which includes hundreds more houses. Each developer has been asked to contribute something to the transport infrastructure that allows for this master plan to be a success. If you give in to this demand, it will undermine that master plan. If the committee votes today to let the developers have their way, you will be sending a message to every developer to promise the earth to get permission, safe in the knowledge they can always roll back on those promises when the time comes for them to pay up. The sad thing is that none of the residents in my ward believe that you'll stick to your guns. The history shows this council rolling over time after time on matters such as this in this part of Grantham. The developer has dragged its heels on this matter, and if they had put half as much effort into making progress with National Highways as they had employing an agency to squirm out of their agreed commitments, then we wouldn't be here today. As the committee will be aware, the developers and their agents have decided to hold a gun to the head of this committee by issuing an appeal against that democratic decision, while simultaneously submitting the applications in front of you now. This tactic is typical of a developer and agent that holds democracy in contempt. It is bullying and a clear test of your resolve as a committee to do what is right for the residents in this part of Grantham and to stand up for yourselves as a committee. Barrowby Parish Council continues to oppose this, Grantham Town Council opposes this, and this committee should continue to oppose this, otherwise it makes a mockery of the Section 106 process. I ask you to vote against the officer recommendation, and I also ask that all votes on these two items be recorded. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions of our speaker? Councillor Ellis.
Sorry, thanks, Councillor Knight. You do speak rather quickly. You made reference to master plan. Could you repeat what it was you said? Because I missed it completely.
I'll summarise in slightly different wording. In this corner of the town, there is a significant amount of development taking place. There are very few objections to that development, not least because every developer that is building in that part of town is meant to be contributing towards transport infrastructure. There are different things that will come up before this committee, I'm sure, in the next few months regarding other pieces of infrastructure. But this is one of the first ones where the developers are actively trying to amend that. They're trying to roll back on their part of the deal. So this, yeah, it is one development and it is one piece of infrastructure, but this developer is contributing towards that piece of infrastructure. If they roll back on this, who is going to contribute towards that piece of infrastructure, and what are other developers going to read into that when it comes to contributing to their own? You are going to get no end of developers in that part of town coming forward to amend their applications if you go with officer recommendation. Does that answer the question?
Not really, no.
Sorry, Councillor Ellis, did you want to... You're not happy, but happy. Councillor Sawyer.
A question for Gareth. Gareth, you said the council has rolled over time and time again. Could you give some examples, please?
Thank you. I've only lived in this town since 2017. Those of you that have lived here longer will know that there were various different conditions that were meant to go along with the Barrowby Gate area, for example, when that was built back in the 70s and 80s. It is a long-term issue in this part of town that there is very little infrastructure. For example, in my ward, I have no real facilities whatsoever. I have a Tesco Express and that's it. I have one tiny little park that's buried down in the town. I am told by many people that when planning permission was given for that part of the town, there were going to be sports facilities, recreational facilities. All of that was rolled back. So this is a very long-term problem. Without going into the sort of the elephant in the room, there is another issue of the Poplar Farm development and the bridge over the railway line that is very much looming in the background as well, a major piece of infrastructure that we know the developers are likely to be questioning. All of this ties into a problem that we've got in that part of town with transport infrastructure in particular. If any of you, and I appreciate that a couple of you will quite regularly use the Barrowby Road way of coming into town from the A1, you'll be very aware of how congested that gets. Just getting off the A1 into town at the moment is bad. Now, this idea of 50 houses equals 11 car movements is, I mean, it's just bizarre. I mean, in my cul-de-sac alone, there are 4 houses and there are 8 cars, and every single one of them goes through that junction on the peak.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Gareth. You've kind of gone back to repeating what you're saying in your speech as opposed to directly. I understand the passion there, but it's actually specifically answering the question, which was around the promised amenities that you have that we have not got. But I do think you did give us some examples relating to Barrowby Gate, so thank you for that. Are there any more any other questions? So I believe, Emma, that you wanted to say something.
Thank you. I just want to issue a word of caution in terms of some of the comments that were made by Councillor Knight in relation to past developments that date back, certainly dating back to the 70s and 80s in terms of failed delivery of infrastructure. I don't know, without looking in those details, exactly what may or may not have been promised that perhaps wasn't delivered, and whether that was the promise secured through the legal agreement or not. But in any case, it's irrelevant to what we're considering today, I'm afraid. Today, you need to consider whether the proposal in front of you is acceptable, and that is not that the developer can avoid delivering the junction improvements that I think we'll all agree are needed, but whether that trigger point can be moved. And that's a very different question that you need to answer, or that we as the Council and the Planning Authority need to answer. It is not about avoiding delivery, it is about when that delivery comes forward, and if the delivery comes forward at 50 dwellings as is proposed in front of us, whether or not that is acceptable in terms of highway safety. I'm sure we'll cover it in further details, but there was some reference in either Councillor Knight's or Councillor Martin's statement about cumulative impact with other developments. That is taken into account in traffic impact assessments and traffic assessments, and you'll know that I've said that to you every single time we've looked at one. And in relation to another development, and Councillor Knight referred to the Poplar Farm development, that at the moment I'm afraid is pure speculation. This Council does not have a planning application in front of it to vary any of the terms of that planning permission that was granted. If it does, we will consider that accordingly, but for today's purpose it is, again, I'm afraid, irrelevant to today's discussion. Obviously we'll go on to the rest of the speakers. I'm sure there'll be further questions and clarification, and then we'll at some point be able to get to the debate and decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask a question, if I may. You picked up the point, it's on page 67, representations received that highways are stating that there would be 11 two-way trips of peak time, and you only referred to that, and you questioned that. Do you have any specific evidence to the contrary regarding movements in that area at present?
So first of all, I can give you a piece of anecdotal evidence straight away. So I live in a cul-de-sac of 4 houses. There are 2 cars for each house, and every single one of those cars goes through that junction in the peak. At least 2 of those cars avoid that junction on the return journey, and the reason they avoid that junction, and I include myself on this, is because we decided to do a rat run around Barrowby Gate and through Barrowby Village as a way of avoiding that junction. Because the problem is that junction is already congested. If you drive through from Grantham out towards Barrowby, if you're driving towards Nottingham, a very, very popular route, you will see cars queuing up to get into the slip road to turn onto the A1 to go southbound. So it's already a problem. It's already too far congested. So this idea there's only going to be 11 movements, I just simply don't buy it. And if there are only going to be 11 movements, where are all the other cars going? Because I reckon it'll be more like about 80 movements. Where are they all going? What they're doing is they're all going around the residential roads. They're going around Barrowby, they're going around Barrowby Gate, they're going around Trent Road. That's where they're going. And that's the reason why we can't just turn around and say, oh, it's just a tiny little bit. It's an already congested junction. There was roadworks on Barrowby Road a couple of months ago, absolute traffic chaos for a long time. I heard various different councillors talking about it, and that was just a few roadworks. You can imagine how bad this will get.
Thank you very much. I believe Emma would like to make another statement.
Sorry, I understand it's a very, very passionate area and quite issue, and quite rightly so, because we need to make sure that when we plan for things, we get it right, we have the best evidence in front of the committee. You are making the decision based on the evidence you have in front of us. It was a really good question, Councillor Morgan, to ask in terms of the contrary evidence, because if we, when we're considering this, wish to reach a contrary view, we will need evidence to present to the inspector, and I'm afraid anecdotal information evidence is unlikely to get very far in that respect. So I won't say any more at the moment because we've got a busy agenda and we've got other speakers that we need to get onto. But just please bear that in mind. You need evidence and you need the technical evidence to support any decision that we make, regardless of whether that's an approval in support of the recommendation or whether that's a refusal. You need to have that technical evidence, not anecdotal evidence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you. Just before I go any further, as Grantham Town Council have objected to this, and I'm the chairman of Grantham Town Council, where do we stand on this as regards me having any input on this?
Does the Town Council have a planning committee? And I suppose the question is, what input did you put into that comment? And are you predetermined? Do you feel that you are predetermined because of the role that you may or may not have placed or had in those comments that came from the Town Council to the District Council? It's not unusual for dual hatters to have that scenario, but I guess it depends on what you may or may not have said, what input you may or may not have had to those comments in coming back. Thank you. Okay,
so I had no input on those comments at all, and I am not predetermined.
Thank you for raising that. I believe we have no more questions for Councillor Knight, so thank you very much. Thank you. So if I could ask the applicant please to come forward. Oh, so my apologies. It's actually our resident Roger Gray, so I have an old list. My understanding is that Roger Grace will be speaking against this proposal. Thank you.
Correct.
And you will have 3 minutes. You just want to indicate when you're ready, and you'll get the 30-second warning. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger Graves. I live on Barrowby Road. I have done for 33 years. I've lived in Grantham for 40 years, so I know this area well. But I think I speak on behalf of myself and thousands of drivers that use this junction every single day, who strongly object to the planning applications before us. The clear condition for the approval of both developers was that no houses should be occupied until the junction was upgraded. The applicants have already had, as you know, an earlier application this year declined by your good selves. They're now applying for 2 smaller blocks of 20 and 30 houses that are virtually complete, especially on the Vistry site. If you, the council, approve these plans to the developers, you can guarantee they'll be back in 3 months for another 50 houses, 3 months later for another 50 houses, and before you know it, all the houses are built, the junction isn't complete, and they will walk away from it like previous applications. How strange it seems that only last month in September they started doing the exploratory works for the junction just before this planning meeting today. Doesn't that make them look good? The road signs are now changed to works suspended to be resumed at a later stage. That later stage is even stated in the documents before you that it will take all of 2025 to draw and agree the infrastructure, and the junction will be completed early 2026. Yes, 2026. That's at least 14 months away, and yet the developers have had planning permission since January 2023. I've just read, whilst being in this meeting, Vistry have said they must generate income from the sale of houses for the local infrastructure. To me, as a finance person, you have that money in place to start with. These developers have had sufficient time since the original planning application was approved to draw up the plans and have it installed, but they are now trying to get out of it. They made the travelling public wait. It is now time to make the developers wait before they can occupy the houses. They know the terms. You, the councillors, please make them stick to it. To the members of this council, for those that don't live in this town,
30 seconds.
This is the busiest road junction in Grantham. You need to understand this junction. Previous committees, etc. have failed to implement. Now is the time for the councillors of this planning committee to stand up for the people of Grantham and for the thousands of travellers who use it daily. And bear in mind, next year the southern bypass will open and the amount of traffic turning right onto the A1 from Nottingham will increase hugely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any further questions? No? Thank you for your time. Thank you. We can now please have the applicant come forward. We have Mike Walker, Land Director for Vistry Homes. And he will be supported by Chris Holloway, Divisional Director for Pell Fishman, Transport Consultant, for technical questions. Thank you. Please let us know when you're ready. You will have 3 minutes to speak and you'll be given a 30-second warning.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. My name's Mike Walker and as was said, I'm the Land Director at Vistry Homes and I'm speaking in relation to this pair of related applications on behalf of both Vistry and Gelson. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. As part of this important allocation within the Council's local plan, new community facilities, including new play area, land for expansion of Poplar Farm Primary School, a new community pavilion and sports pitches, alongside financial contributions for a new community centre, are all to be provided. This shows our commitment to providing new and improved facilities for existing residents of this part of Grantham. We're keen to see residents move into the ready and waiting homes. However, as you have heard, improvements to the A1, A52 junctions are currently required before any occupancy can proceed. Since the approvals, we've been working closely with relevant parties to finalise the improvements and detailed designs, but due to extensive delays with national highways that are out of our control, these works simply cannot progress at the rate we would all like them to. It's been years to date. Gelson and Vistry are fully committed to delivering these improvements and have already invested on over 2 years' worth of work from our design and technical consultants, and very recently spent over £350,000 undertaking on-site investigations on the A52, which have just been referred to, required to complete the design works in order to secure the relevant national highways, technical and legal approvals to permit the implementation of the improved works. We don't spend that sort of money without the intention of completing the works so we can release more houses, and there's 1,000 houses in total roughly to go. The intention is to do the works as soon as possible. We're delayed by others, not through our own lack of resource or input into it, I would suggest. We're also very conscious of local concerns about highway safety, and to this end, the proposal to release 50 homes has been scrutinised by our own consultants, Lincolnshire County Council and National Highways, all of whom are satisfied that no highway safety issues will arise. This is definitely not about a compromise between highway safety and housing delivery, but instead a pragmatic and measured response that delivers both. Whilst we continue working with National Highways to speed the junction works up in any way we can, this revised application seeks permission for up to 50 homes to be occupied whilst this essential work on the junctions progresses. Allowing a limited number of homes to be occupied during this period will allow residents
30 seconds.
Thank you, to move in, providing them with the homes local people urgently need. A large number of these homes will be affordable, thus addressing an area of critical need. In addition, the delivery of these homes will help contribute to the district-wide housing delivery numbers and prevent speculative, unallocated developments elsewhere. In summary, this is an application that will address the current shortfall in housing locally, whilst Vistry and Gelson remain fully committed to delivering the highway improvements needed. We look forward to your support in this practical solution that will allow us to make progress at Rectory Farm while we continue to work closely with the relevant highway partners to expedite the junction improvements. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Johnson, first of all.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. What is the delay then in getting this road junction sorted? You say it's part there and everything. Surely it needs to be done. Listening to everybody, this road junction needs to be done. Why is everybody dragging their feet in getting it done?
There's nobody in particular dragging their feet. There are the practices and processes and for want of a better expression, the bureaucracy we have to go through. We've redesigned, as you've seen earlier, and resolved to agree, the work that has been taken to alter the junction from the planning permission that was granted a number of years ago to now has taken a couple of years to just change that set of drawings. It's the way it works with the County Council, with National Highways. The consultants are liaising weekly with the authorities that approve these things. We've now got a junction scheme that we can put forward for their approval. If we get your approval, we can go forward for National Highways agreement. Once we get their agreement to the designs, which could take 9, 12, 18 months, it's the way they operate. We still then have to book road space with National Highways on a busy A1, A52 junction, which could take, again, another 9, 12 months before we can start work. We've not, and our consultant team, and in fairness to them, the county and the National Highways, they're working at the pace that they work at. We're trying to push it along. It is a slow process. It's not for lack of effort. It's not for lack of redrawing. It's not for lack of cost and expense. It is the time it takes, I'm afraid, to get these things approved. Hence, we are years down the road. We're expecting 2020, or we're hoping, crossing fingers, 2026, that we've got approval and road space. But that's our estimate. That's not yet confirmed. We are reliant upon National Highways ultimately to give us all the approval to get on with the works.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I've got two questions, if I may. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask the first one, really, but with regards to the one that's gone to appeal, if today's application is granted, will you still be continuing that for appeal for the 150 homes?
I guess it depends on the outcome of today, doesn't it? If we step back, if we take a step back, we've spoken about the engineering and the consultants' review and, if you like, as was mentioned by the assistant director, there's the engineering side of things, and the 150 will still provide a safe junction in view of the professionals, in view of the engineering, the calcs, the traffic survey, so on and so forth. We'd be reluctant, to be honest, we'd be reluctant to withdraw it, and I certainly wouldn't commit to that now. We'd have to take it away and review it. The reluctance would be simply because of the time scale it is potentially going to take to get to a position where we can implement the access. It's not a case of not wanting to do it. We're not trying to do this by stealth and come for 50, as was suggested, and come for another 50, and come for another. We came for 150 because the numbers and the sums and the engineering says that's okay. We were refused. We've been building. We'd like to occupy houses, sell houses, get affordable homes occupied. The 50 is a compromise position, to be frank, simply because we still believe the 150 is okay, and the 150 will give us enough to build before we actually get the road space, the green light to actually complete, to put it in the works, to start the works, to complete the works.
Thank you. I understand that Emma would like to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to add a couple of comments, if I may. Obviously, we're in a live appeal situation, and it's not all the time that you then come back to Planning Committee with a variation of the theme, as it were, and have this scenario. I think I just want to be absolutely clear where the applicant is saying, or Mr Walker saying on behalf of the applicant, that they think that the 150 that's a scheme that's at appeal in terms of the trigger point for the delivery of the junction is fine. That's the applicant's view, or should I correctly say the appellant's view in terms of that appeal. That's not material to today. Today's decision does not bind this council to any particular course of action in terms of that appeal. We are robustly defending that appeal, and of course I have to remind you we've got the support of Lincolnshire County Council and National Highways, because both, as in their expert opinion, objected to that application. This application is a different application. It needs to be assessed on its own merits. It's a scheme with a different trigger point, and it's a scheme where obviously the county and National Highways comments are in the papers in front of you. They are content with that trigger point. They remain discontent with the trigger point that's in the appeal scheme of 150. Just to clarify, they are two separate schemes, and we don't need to muddy the waters by worrying about what this decision will do in relation to that appeal, because it's going through its own process. Whether the appellants choose to withdraw that appeal or not, they're welcome to do so, of course. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say that, because I am lacking my Vice Chair today, I've currently got speaking Councillor Trotter. Am I correct you raised your hand? Or are you just raising your hand? Okay. And then Councillor Harrison, Councillor Bird as well. Councillor Smith, did you want to come back? Yeah.
It was just with regards to the number of homes. Like 50 is a nice number. I was just wondering, rather than asking LCC whether they're happy with, have they been asked the number of homes that could be occupied?
Emma, if you can.
I think, again, and I don't know what discussions the Vistry and the others have had directly with County around that, but I think we don't need to concern ourselves with that. This is an application. It's a really good question and really good point in terms of actually where is that trigger point. And I understand the concern about creep, as in we may get to, you know, they might want to come back, but actually we're just determining that today's application, it does not mean that 60 is fine, 70 is fine. We're going to keep getting more and more requests. All we can do today is to consider what's in front of us, which is that trigger point for 50 dwellings, irrespective of what other questions are. I'm sure that if the applicants thought they had a bit more breathing space and that County and National Highways were content with a slightly higher figure, I'm sure that's what would be in front of us today, but it is not. And I'm going to stray into speculation if I'm not careful. So I think just it's the 50 today that we're looking at. Thank you.
If I may, Chair, sorry, just come back on that. We have had dialogue with the authorities, which has got us to the 50 position. What the determination of the appeal is, we will have to wait and see. I agree with everything the officer has said. But our position is the 150 is safe and secure. The 50 that is in front of you today is the Highway Authority's position that is safe and secure. We have the properties on, you mentioned the houses, it's 30 for us, 20 for Gelson. We probably have enough foundations in the pair of us to build those out. It does give us breathing space. If we get this, we can go on and build those and have them occupied. If the appeal does not happen, we'll have to fold the site, mothball it, and we'll have to wait and see and have those negotiations to see whether there is a different trigger point. It's not something we want to do. It costs time, it costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of your time, your officer's time. We'd rather do it, we would rather have done it with the previous application. This is a fix, and if it is, this is it until we get the approvals. But we are pushing, we are driving hard for the approvals. We're committed to the 106, we're committed to the site, we're in for it for millions and millions of pounds. It's not something you walk away when you've spent millions of pounds building the schemes, as we have done today, and the investment in £350,000 worth of investigative works for the road junction, so on and so forth. It will happen. The 106 is in place. There will be delivery of the community infrastructure. It's just about when we can actually get on and build the development as we all hoped we would be able to be doing now.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
I'm going to save most of mine for the debate, I think, but a quick question. You say about the speed that district, county and highways work at. Were you not aware of that when you first put this all in?
Yes, but we had a planning permission that had two junction designs for the north and southbound slip roads that had gone through the process as part of the planning application that had been signed off by all the authorities. So it's not without reasonable thought that we've got something that is significant, is of significance, is approved, and is something that with relatively minor tweaks we're then in with, and we can get on, submit to National Highways and build. As it transpires, they're after a lot more than was originally designed, which we are doing, and we are prepared to do, we have to do. But that in itself has taken the best part of 9 to 12 months of conversation and debate to find out how we tweak and redesign the junction that we've already got an approval for. So, despite our best efforts, it is a timely, time-consuming process. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We're mindful that we've kind of strayed into the amount of time for questions. I am also minded, though, that this is a very important application with regards to our residents. Can I just check to see who else? If you could raise your hand if you had a question. So, Councillor Bird, and did anyone else actually have a question? In that case, Councillor Bird, if you'd like to go ahead with your question, please, and then we'll draw to know the questions.
Thank you. My understanding of this is that 8 years ago, the application was initially made, and the traffic issues were so significant at that point that the junction was deemed unacceptable, and hence the condition was put in, requiring the improvement prior to occupancy. My question is, has the volume of traffic changed in the last 8 years, and if so, is there any data to show what the ongoing increase or decrease in traffic has been since the original condition was actually put in on the basis that it was already unacceptable then? Thank you.
That's a really good question, because I can pass that to Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of the data, so there was the original submission, and the actual technical work that ultimately reached agreement regarding these improvements was only completed in 2020. So, and that was based on some data from 2019. So it had already been updated and assessed since the original submission anyway, which is actually fairly standard practice in terms of negotiations with the highway authorities as part of determining an application. So there is current data. There has, as I'm sure you've all been aware, been a pandemic as well, which has affected traffic flows, and that's affected that. And long-term monitoring is basically suggesting that traffic data only recently returned to pre-pandemic levels. So there is an ongoing, it's an ongoing monitoring process in terms of the traffic data itself, but it hasn't materially changed since that original assessment in 2019.
Thank you. I do have one quick question. Apologies for sticking it in at the end. How are we actually monitoring the traffic? You referred to that. Is this desk-based, or is this actual bodies on the ground or equipment on the ground that's actually assessing the volume of traffic?
So the volume of traffic was actually undertaken in a traffic survey itself. The monitoring I was talking about was more general statistics on for road networks across the county as a whole, which is you have automatic traffic counters based across there, and as do National Highways on their networks as well. So there's nothing specific in terms of monitoring at this junction. The monitoring is more generally what's happening with traffic trends across the SRN and county as a whole.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, thank you very much. So Councillor, this is, I was about to say, but thank you for your time, thank you. And we'll now move forward into any questions from officer and or debate. So Councillor Trotter.
Yeah, if I've been quite honest, I feel that we've been backed into a corner by National Highways and LCC. I am fairly local and I have a good knowledge of the junction. Obviously, we've got coming off the A1 north south, coming from Nottingham's horrendous crossing over that junction. So I completely agree, it is really dangerous, and no doubt the traffic does avoid going through our estates in Grantham. So I concur what Councillor Knight has said. But I just don't know how we can get away from the fact that it's been approved. There's no objections by highways. And I'm almost crying out, is there a planning reason that we can turn this down? Because everything is screaming at me saying, it's so dangerous, any more cars on that junction. And it is horrendous. And there are accidents all the time. Not along that stretch of road. So that is how I feel. I'm really in no man's land at the moment.
Thank you for that comment. Does anybody else have Councillor Wood was next, and then Councillor Ellis, and then Councillor Bellamy, and then Councillor Harrison.
My question really follows up from Councillor Sarah Trotter's comments really about we've got the comments from National Highways, which are quite straightforward, they're happy with it. But we had Councillor Knight give us his comments, and the resident give us the comments as well, the problems there. And we've had this problem before, haven't we, where residents who live there and know the area give us their comments on highways problems, but then the official comments from National Highways say it's okay. What weight can we give to actual, I know we're all about evidence, to actual people who live there, who actually know the situation and give that. What weight can we give to that against, I suppose, the experts, National Highways, who say it's okay? Is there any weight we can give to the speakers?
I think to a degree you've probably answered your question. It's a concern that's been raised. We have to take it into account. We have to have regard to it. And we absolutely are, because we're debating it right now in terms of highway safety and capacity at those junctions. And it's really important. It's a debate that we probably have on a huge number of our planning applications, and certainly do at this planning committee. We have consultations that we carry out, all sorts of statutory and other stakeholders who can expertly advise this planning authority, this committee, in terms of the position. If we go to appeal on something, and this is anything, we have to be able to, with evidence to support what we are arguing, persuade an inspector that our position is correct. The difficulty we've got here is let's not pretend we all drive these roads. We all know that we've queued at junctions. We all will have seen accidents. We all know that there are issues on a whole manner of roads. This is technical information, technical data that's in front of us. We've got a detailed transport assessment which has been assessed by the Highways Authority and by National Highways, and they, in their expert opinion, looking at safety and capacity, have raised no objections to this proposal. What evidence do we have that we could present to an inspector, if we refuse it, to defend reasonably that position? That's the challenge. As I said before, unfortunately, anecdotal comments from residents about times that they've queued or accidents that they've seen is not sufficient in terms of evidence. Please be assured, as the planning committee, if we get concerns raised with us by residents about accidents, about junction capacity, we do have those conversations with our counterparts at both the Highways Authority at County and also National Highways to make sure We fully understand their response and that their response is taking into account those concerns raised. So the advice you've been given in the papers will be fully, the people making those comments will be fully aware of the issues that the residents have with this, and that the conversations that have been ongoing through this application, prior to this application, and as part of the previous application and the appeal. So hopefully that helps, but I really have to bring you back to its evidence and what would we present to an inspector to counter the technical evidence that's in front of us and been presented and corroborated by the Highways Authority. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So, Councillor Ellis.
Thanks. And I'm referring to what you referred to regarding the revised highways capacity and safety technical review. Is the fact that they have deemed that 50 dwellings would result in 12 additional two-way trips and 11 two-way trips in the PM, is that based on a national standardised formula? I think that's really important. If, to me, 50 houses and those numbers of trips don't add up, but it must be based on something. And the other thing is, we do all know that this is an accident black spot, and do we have any figures relating to accidents in this area that would support our argument? Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just clarify, I'm not a highways expert by any stretch of the imagination. From my understanding, there's a lot of information that goes into those technical documents. Some of it is actual data that's collected, some of it is models, traffic modelling, and for Lincolnshire there's traffic modelling that the county agree and they update regularly. And then there is also lots of other evidence that can come from similar developments in the same sets of circumstances. So you wouldn't, for Grantham, pick a development like this in London and use that as a comparator, because that's not a comparator in terms, it might be a comparison in terms of a 3-bed to 3-bed and a 4-bed to 4-bed, etc., but it's not a comparator in terms of the sets of circumstances that you might find in outer London versus here in terms of need and reliability, reliance on the private motor vehicle and access to public transport. So there's a lot of that goes into that. So those figures will have been scrutinised by the county and they will have been scrutinised by the National Highways Authority. They will not be looking at this document and sort of saying, well, the developer said 11 peak hour movements. I guess that's okay. They will have scrutinised it. They will need to assure themselves that that figure makes complete sense and is as accurate as it can be for the purposes of this. In terms of the accident data, I don't think we have the accident data. Adam sounds like he does have some, so I'll let him speak in a second, but irrespective of that, county definitely does, and they take that into account, because I have seen plenty of comments, not just here but elsewhere in my career in planning, where the county will the Highways Authority will specifically look at something and say, actually, it is an accident black spot. We do have these accident records, and they might want different forms of mitigation, whether it's the sight lines, etc. So that is most definitely taken into account. And then I'll let Adam speak and give you the specifics on the actual accident data here. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to follow up on Emma's point in terms of accident data, the information provided is that from the 7-year period up to July of last year, there was a total of 7 accidents at that junction, so equating to 1 each year is the official data that they have provided.
Thank you. Councillor Bellamy.
If we go back to the original refusal, that was clear cut, because highways and Lincolnshire Highways and National Highways both objected, and like I say, to a man and a woman, every single person voted with a recommendation which to refuse it. But at the same time, I think sympathy was shown for the developer, because we realised it was going to probably cause them difficulties. It's probably holding up the delivery of the local plan and all sorts of other issues. So in the meantime, obviously they've come back with almost a compromise thing. And this time, highways and national highways have said it's okay. If with the original one, that's been appealed, and I'm pretty sure that they'll lose that appeal. But with this one, if it goes to appeal, I'm convinced we would lose it if we refuse this. And so all we would be doing is delaying what's going to happen anyway. So my opinion is that, like the original application that we refused it because there was concrete evidence there and the objections from highways. And this time it's the other way round. And I can't see absolute sympathy for the ward councillors and the people that live there, but I personally can't see that there's anything that we can refuse on it. And if we do refuse it, all we're doing is delaying the inevitable, and it'll happen anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like some clarification because I'm obviously going to pick this all up as quick as everybody else. Are Lincolnshire County Council actually contradicting themselves? We've just had two things come up where they stated in there request that the local planning authority does not discharge condition 24 until the agreed works have completed. And we're past that. And then it also states that the revised scheme will be sufficient to discharge 24 once the agreed works have been completed. And yet here we are now, changing condition 24. So, am I missing something? Is it going over my head? Or is that a blatant contradiction of their terms?
I think the thing to point out with that, Councillor Harris, is about the use of terminology particular. So with the previous application, what we were considering was a submission of details. So effectively the condition is still there, it's just these are the details that you have to implement. And what County was saying effectively in their response is, we are comfortable that those details are the same, provide the same level of mitigation, but you cannot formally say that that condition has been fulfilled until those junction works have been complete. So they're not contradicting themselves. Ultimately, it will be the same case here. We cannot, if the developer comes back to us and says, can you confirm that condition has been fulfilled and complied with? Well, the point is no. Until those junction works are complete and done, they have not fulfilled the obligations of that condition. Whether that condition is being proposed now is varied to say that that condition can be fulfilled at 50 occupations as opposed to prior to occupation. That's not what their comments effectively are saying.
Okay, I'll try and get my head around that a little bit. So, are we able to condition this in any way?
So the effect of a Section 73 permission is that it is still a condition. So the planning permission will be there in full and says these junction works have to be completed prior to 50 occupations in total across those two schemes. As I say, it's specified 30 on the Vistry side and 20 on the Gelson side.
Sorry, yeah, but prior to this, on those two things we've just passed, we agreed, what we have agreed there wasn't any houses being, because we're not changing it yet. That's what this is. So we've just agreed two changes to a junction, and now we're changing section 24 on the junctions that we just agreed. I can't quite get my head around that.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not. I need it explained to me.
So just to clarify, so the last two applications you have considered is effectively dealing with what that actual scheme of mitigation looks like. So what the junction works themselves comprise of, and because of the way that the condition is worded, it allows the planning authority to agree to an alternative scheme design without it actually varying the permission in full. What you are now looking at is the actual point at when the junction works have to be implemented. So that's what the slight differentiation is. But as I say, the effect would be, and as I explained in the presentation, it will be that the condition on the permission, and when the permission is granted in full, is that the works have to be done, that revised scheme has to be done prior to 50 occupations in total on phase 1.
Sorry, can I come back again? Sorry, I just, you know what it's like. I need to get it right in my head. So we've just agreed on the agreement that that junction will be finished before any houses are occupied. So they were agreed on no houses being occupied. Now we're coming to this and we're saying 50 houses being occupied, and we're changing that after we've just agreed. So were these in fact done in the wrong order? Should we have changed this around the other way and agreed the 50 houses first and then agreed the junction? Do you see where I'm getting at, or am I just being totally thick and losing the whole lot?
No, I can help here, I think. And if it's any reassurance, Phil, Adam and I have also had that same conversation just to check the rationale in terms of the order that we do things today. So when we issue a planning permission, it's usually subject to conditions. Those conditions will often require details to be submitted. They also will require a condition will say, this is what you've got to do, this is when you've got to agree it with us, and this is when you've got to complete it by. And so it's got those different components. So the original condition was technical design of the junction, and you've got to implement the junction before any occupation. What we were looking at first was just the technical design of that junction, but because it was in accordance with the original planning permissions, the trigger point on those original planning permissions is still prior to first occupation. This application is looking to change the trigger point of the delivery of the junction, as we've looked at, from no dwelling, no occupations, to 50 occupations. And therefore it's perfectly fine in this way, because the condition, if we're minded to approve this application, will simply refer back to the conditions that have been agreed under the original planning permission. And the reason for doing that is when we issue a Section 73 planning permission, you issue a second planning permission. So theoretically, the developer could decide that actually I don't want to occupy any dwellings, so I'm going to revert with the original application. I don't think they would in this instance, but they could, because that is a planning permission in its own right, and then this is a planning permission in its own right. We don't want to see those technical details again about the design of the junction, because we've just dealt with them. So what we do is we require that the developer, on the second permission with the new trigger, if we approve that, builds that junction in accordance with the previously agreed plans, just so we don't have to see it again. But it is the right order, because the first was just looking purely at that design of the junction, which had changed slightly. This is looking at the timing of the delivery of when that junction comes in. So hopefully that helps, but not at all a stupid question.
That's fine. Okay, I can get my head around that. But then, what changed with highways saying that the junction must be done before any houses are built on those previous applications, but then on this one they're saying they're quite happy for 50 houses to be built. That's what's throwing me. Their advice here on the previous two that we did, the planning condition does not discharge condition 24 until the agreed works have been completed. It states that at 5.1 on page 57. So we did that on that, and now they're quite happily saying, well, no, it's all right, don't worry about that, you can build 50 houses. And that's where the contradiction's coming in for me.
I can answer that as well, actually. It's in planning terms, we quite often very loosely talking about discharging planning conditions, and it's naughty, it's wrong to do so, because when you legally discharge something, it is completely complete. And in relation to a condition that says we want you to agree the design, or this is the design of what you're doing, and we want you to, and we require you to build it, you cannot completely discharge and say you've satisfied that condition until it has been done. So County are looking at this on that conditions application. They're only asked, is this technical detail okay or not? And therefore they've responded in that frame, and they're saying to us, can we not finally discharge that condition until the building works have been completed. Because if we wrote to the developer now and said, that's fine, we're happy for you to discharge, we've discharged you of your requirements in terms of that condition, we'd never get the junction done, because we would have said too early, that's fine, you satisfied the condition in totality, and that's wrong. So that's all they're doing in that comment, is they're saying to us, the details are okay, but you can't formally discharge the requirements of the condition until the junction's been built. Thank you.
So, on this, then, are we able to put a condition on the whole thing? Are we able to do that now? As in, I don't want to be coming back here in another 6 months and then, well, we can't afford it now and it's gone on a bit longer and LCC took too long and we need to do another 30 houses. Can we put a full and final condition that if it's going to be this 50, it is this 50?
I would love to be able to say that any condition is final. However, the planning process allows applicants to come in and vary those applications, so I cannot do that. The developers heard the concerns. You've got the assurances at the moment that the county and the National Highways are still objecting to that 150 dwellings, and that's going through that appeal process. The build-out programme, anecdotally, for 50 dwellings is, well, actually, the developers doing this in two stages, but they'll have their programme, and that will take them a reasonable chunk of time to complete those units in any case. I'm not sure when the appeal is scheduled for, but it might well be that we've had the appeal decision and hopefully the developer's got some leeway with the developments. But I can't say never. We can't condition it to say this is the final position. All I can say to you is we will assess any new application on its own merits, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's fine. Thank you. They're all relevant questions. Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I think the concern here is that a lot of the modelling seems to have been desk-based on whether it's acceptable at the junction, but residents are obviously concerned about their experience of the junction. I was just wondering, if we were to approve this, can we put a condition on with regard to ongoing traffic maintenance, not maintenance, management, just to see whether there really is an increase, or if there are accidents at the junction, whether that could sort of put a stop to things?
Unfortunately not. We have to make a decision today. Are we satisfied that the proposed trigger point is acceptable or not? You can't say, yeah, that's fine, you can get on, but actually we're going to take that away from you if we suddenly find that there's lots of accidents at that junction. Whilst some of it will be desk-based, these are very experienced highways officers, and they do use real data. So some of the desk-based element is coming from real data, whether it's here or elsewhere. They don't want to approve, we don't want to approve schemes that are not going to work. So they'll be using the best evidence and information available to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Trotter.
I don't know if this is relevant. I mean, obviously, we've got to find builders to build all these houses. I just wondered, and I probably should have asked the expert, the applicant, building houses and getting junction, I don't know how quickly, or is it how long's a piece of string to get these developments built? Are we worrying, I'm thinking cart before the horse, are we going to be able to get the horse in front, if you know what I mean, with the junction?
I don't know in terms of the build-out of, are you talking about the build-out of the junction or the build-out of the houses? The houses. So, as a rule of thumb, you'd probably work on about 50 dwellings completion per year for a single house builder. They can go quicker than that. I've seen up to about 90 being quoted. Here we've obviously got 2 house builders, so it would be quicker than that. So you've got 30 being proposed for one and 20. But I actually believe that most of the houses are built already, so they're already a number of the way through that particular process. Yes, There is a lot of pressure at the moment. The government has mandated that they wish to build 1.5 million homes over the next 5 years. There's a lot of pressure, presumably, on the house building community and certainly on planning authorities to think about that. Absolutely, if we felt that this was not safe and that there were traffic concerns, even though there is that pressure and that requirement to give weight to the benefit of delivery of housing, I don't think any of us would be sat here today recommending approval if we, just for the sake of getting the houses delivered. If there are safety issues, then there's safety issues, and we absolutely need the development up front, and that's the position with the 150 houses. With the 50, we're obviously in a different position where the county is satisfied. So there is always a balance. You have to give weight to the delivery of houses. You have to, and I understand what the developer is saying in terms of otherwise they'll mothball the site for the time being. If it was dangerous, if there was no capacity and we needed it now, then that would be reflected in the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bird.
Thank you. Again, this might have been relevant more probably with the speakers. Did I hear correctly that with the earlier ones, the plans themselves won't be finally finalised with highways until 2025, or is that when the junction itself was due to be completed? I'm just trying to work out the timescale when the junction has been completed. Did we get? I've got a follow-up. Did we get that timescale? The actual, not the plans being approved finally, but the actual junction being in place. Do we have a date for that? No, I think that was the plans approved. That's what I'm just checking. Thank you.
Yeah, so we cannot give a definitive date in terms of the actual junction works being improved, because as the developer spoke to there is a process to go through before you even get to the point of booking road space to actually do the works. What they did say, and I think what is being played out through the appeal process at the moment, is that they are currently anticipating commencing the junction improvements in March, so once they've got the technical approval in March of 2026, and that those junction improvement works would then be completed 6 months after that. So September 2026 is what their current anticipated sort of timescales are for the junction to be improved and operational. But as I say, there's no sort of legal agreement tying it to that specific time frame at the moment. It is very much dependent on that technical approval process.
Okay, so can I follow up?
Yes, do you want to?
Yes, thank you. Yes, it was just, I'm just trying to visualise this site of 50 properties that are about to be completed, and depending on how things go, they could be occupied fairly soon. Then the rest of the site cannot be occupied for at least another 2 years, by the sound of it, or possibly longer. So it doesn't feel a very desirable thing to actually want to do in the first place. It might surely be better to complete the junction and then occupy them, but that's obviously for the developer. But it just feels a very odd thing to be approving 50 in the knowledge that no one else can be occupied for at least another 2 years. I just wonder about the common sense of the process.
Is it any different to allowing no houses to be occupied and yet they're built? The triggers on occupation, which quite correctly should be, because the issue arises when you've got people living in those dwellings and therefore they've got cars and they're making those movements. It may well be an issue for the developer if 50 is the point we've reached, and they hit 50 occupations and they've still got a year or whatever it may be. That's the developer's issue, and yes, that may mean that they have to slow down their construction rates. It may mean that they don't, but they just have lots of unoccupied housing. But what this committee needs to concern itself with is that we've got a request to vary the trigger point so that the developer can have 50 houses occupied across the entire site before the junction is improved. And the question is there enough capacity? Is this safe? Is this sensible to do so? And so whilst you're raising some good points about is that logical for the developer to do it in terms of leaving a site half built, that's not our question, I'm afraid, that we need to answer. It's all about the safety and the purpose for that original condition, and on whether it's okay to vary it to move that trigger point. So hopefully that's helped. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sawyer.
A question for Emma. Emma, I think we're in danger of getting lost in the detail here. Are there any material planning considerations that would allow this application to be rejected?
Well, if there were, then the application may have been recommended differently. The officer's recommendation is to approve. The reason for the original condition, I'll just read it to you, is to ensure that the A1, A52 junction has adequate capacity to accommodate the additional traffic generated by the development. That is really the main thing that we should be considering. If we move that trigger point to 50, does the junction have adequate capacity to allow up to 50 dwellings to be occupied? The recommendation is yes, it does. If the committee feel otherwise, then so be it. But you need the evidence to defend that at appeal. But it really is, it's that capacity of that junction. That is what we're here to consider, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a number of points or questions, if I may, based partly on what people have said. I think Councillor Smith's point about the quality of the evidence is very relevant and does come up. What I have been advised in the past could happen, but unfortunately never does, is that if residents are generally concerned about traffic, they themselves can commission their own expert report, which then could be used as evidence. But unfortunately, people tend to rely on their own anecdotal evidence rather than actually do that. I am concerned about the quality of the data that we're relying on, given that we're being told that it was basically used, a general road network data and calculations have been used. I really would like a bit more information regarding exactly what was used. We're looking at these houses now in relation to the specific junction condition 24. I am mindful, however, that obviously the vehicles, the point was made actually by our speaker, Councillor Knight, that in fact people go in all sorts of directions. They don't just use that junction. It may explain, however, the figures that were presented regarding the numbers and the impact because of that. That may explain that, actually. We were told about, and I think we should consider the social benefit of the provision of the housing. A reference was made specifically to affordable homes. So I just want to ask, is there, of the housing that's being provided, are actually any of those 50 proposed going to be actually affordable homes, if I could ask that question, because it was referred to by the speaker. Or was that just a general comment in relation to the whole development? If I can ask that. And I think, could we, I think we've answered the question, the time constraints on this. I think it is really unfortunate that, to be fair to everybody, it does seem that a lot of the issues relate to the delays from national highways and even county in sorting out the issue with the junction in the first place, and as a result that's has had a knock-on impact. But I am concerned about the data because we seem to be not accepting the anecdotal evidence from residents, but we're willing to accept not specific site data from the applicant. And I do wonder about that, and I'd appreciate having some comment on that.
Yeah, so just to come back on that point, Chair, and I think to sort of build on what you heard from Emma earlier, the way that things such as this are assessed is using transport models. Now, those transport models are based upon survey data collected from the site itself, so things such as traffic counts from the site, so those tubes that you often see across the road, that will be collecting traffic counts from the site. It will be looking at things in terms of vehicular speeds. That then gets put into a model which uses comparable data from other sites, similar schemes around the locality, around the country, to almost cross-reference to see whether the conclusions of their assessment are broadly what would be expected. So it's not just a case of it is solely a desk-based assessment, there is actual on-the-ground data collected, but it is compared across national sort of statistics, etc., almost just to sense-check what the outputs of that model are. And then just in terms of the point that you raised, Councillor Morgan, in terms of the affordable homes, I think that was a point generally about the site. What the effect of the variation to the trigger to occupation would be to allow occupation of 50 dwellings. It doesn't specify which plots on the site specifically it is, so it doesn't necessarily confirm whether it's open market or affordable homes.
Thank you. I understand, Emma, you've got some more supporting comments.
Thank you. And I've got the statement up, and it is actual data that's in there, but I think possibly what we heard the speaker say was about general monitoring of traffic, because I think he made some comments about how traffic generally has only just returned to pre-COVID levels, and that was through general monitoring, and that's generally done across the county. So I think perhaps that's where the slight confusion has arisen, because obviously that's looking at general predictions, and that's something that the county do from all the time, and other highways experts will be doing. Thank you.
Thanks. So to clarify, what we're saying is that the data that has been presented and referred to by highways is actual site data, and therefore should be given substantial weight. Thank you. Councillor Ellis, I believe you also, and then Councillor Fellows. Actually, Councillor Fellows, you haven't yet spoken. Would you like to go first?
Thank you, Chair. I was actually hoping to remain silent on this, because obviously I'm very much always persuaded to listen to local councillors, and also wanted to listen to the arguments. But the one thing that I totally agree with Councillor Bellamy on this one, and my reasons for it are almost too simplistic for words. And I think it's the notion, if we pass this recommendation, do we in fact make the traffic problem there any better? Sorry, if we reject it. I'll say that again. If we reject this, do we make the traffic there any better? And we don't. There is obviously a problem with traffic there, and I totally empathise, but that problem is not going to go away. So does this new proposal make that significantly worse? Both of the agencies are saying not. So therefore, again, looking at it from outside, who am I to turn around and say, I'm sorry, agencies, I think you're wrong? So in the balance, and because of our need for homes, and because of our need to move things along, again, if we reject this application, what happens? We just kick it all down the road for another year? We have more traffic congestion? Because it's not going to get any better if we reject it. So therefore, I'm very much persuaded by the arguments of Councillor Bellamy, and at present, I'm inclined to agree with it. And again, apologise for local councillors, but traffic is traffic.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you.
Then Councillor Crawford.
First of all, the delays with regard to county and highways have nothing to do with us. There were always going to be delays, so I don't think we even have to take that into consideration, personally. And I completely disagree respectfully with Councillor Fellows. I am not... The data that we've been given by the authorities doesn't give me any confidence. I have no confidence in that data, simply because of the inconsistencies from the original refusal 8 years ago on the grounds of safety, but now all of a sudden, it's deemed safe. I'm not comfortable with this.
Thank you. Can I just ask for clarification that the original refusal, was that a generic based on the entire development, or was it based on 50 houses?
So the very original application. So the very original application wasn't a refusal at all. What would have happened is we'd have had the application in front of us, and obviously this predates my time here, but what would have happened is we'd have had the application in front of us to consider. We'd have had traffic modelling based on the models that were in place at the time, based on the evidence that was in play at the time, and the county and the National Highways England, I think then, would have looked at that and would have said they were so concerned with capacity that there should be no occupations, no additional vehicles until such a point that we've got these junction improvements. But things change from time to time, so we always have to look at the best evidence. And I know that seems uncomfortable for the committee to think that 8 years ago it was needed, so why is it not now? But things genuinely do change. People do have shifts in terms of their vehicle movements and how they're travelling. But also bear in mind that when we're looking at this, we're not just looking at the traffic today that's out there. When we do these models, I say we in the collective sense because I physically don't do them, but when they're doing the traffic modelling, they are taking into account consented schemes and allocated schemes in the local plan, and that also changes from time to time. So it is looking at the reality now, but it's looking at what the model's predicting growth, and it's feeding in all of the planned houses we've got in and around the area and the other vehicular movements. So that is all taken into account, and I'm afraid you might not have any confidence in the data. We will need data to contradict the alternative data, which we don't currently have, to defend this as an appeal, and please be assured things do change from time to time. It's absolutely fine to look at the current data. We should not be referring and relating back to data that's 8 years old on a previous application when it's been updated. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you. Again, I feel we're always put in between a rock and a hard place sometimes with highways and the applicants. Like Councillor Bellamy said, Councillor Fellows said, and Emma has said, we don't have the evidence to go against this application, unfortunately. But surely the trigger point at being 50 is better than 150, and therefore that junction will get built sooner rather than later. I do feel sorry for the residents who use that junction. It's a horrible junction. I don't like it. But I can't see a way forward going where we are. So I'm quite happy to second Councillor Fellows' proposal that we accept this.
Yeah, we haven't actually had a proposition yet. So Councillor Crawford will propose again. Councillor Bellamy, you've got your hand up.
Are you proposing? Yeah. Well, I will second it, and I'll just... Highways, obviously, there's the question here about mission creep, and will they come back for more and more and more? But highways have already proved there is a bottom line, and that's why the 150 was refused. And if there's been a negotiation ongoing, I would say that 50 is highways red line. So I'm quite happy to second this purely for that reason. I don't see how the applicant can come back and ask for more when highways have already said that there is a bottom line there. So I'm quite happy to second that.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions or debate before going to vote? Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, so you've had a proposal and a second. I feel I can't do this. We've got LCC that 8 years ago were telling us that there was problems there, and now we're supposed to believe that in the 8 years since then the traffic's got better. Sorry, I can't get my head around that. So they were agreeing 8 years ago that no houses could be done until the junction was done. Now they're saying it's better, and we're going to put 50 houses on, then we know what's coming next as well. So for me, sorry, I can't vote for this.
Can I just come back to Councillor Harrison says, in 8 years, think how the world has changed. We don't all work 9 to 5 now. COVID happened and a lot of people work from home. So driving has changed. So, you know, from what 8 years to go to now, things have changed. There might be less journeys because people are working from home. So the junction might not be as busy as it was 8, 10 years ago. But, you know, that is life, unfortunately. Things happen, things change. You know, I don't like where we are with this, but I feel to get that junction that we need, the changes, we need to get these 50 built, and then we can get on with it.
Thank you for that. I'm very torn because actually I used to live on Barrowby Road, and I know, and that was before all of the recent development that's occurred, and I know how bad the traffic could be then. We have subsequently had which I do think will have had a definite impact, what I call the Muddle Go Nowhere development has occurred since, and is in place. But I agree with you, if I look at my own road, I live on Harrowby Road now, I can think of at least 6 residents who work from home, and they no longer do the commuting that they used to do. So I do think the world is changing, and it does make a difference. I think also we do need to consider the impact overall on the developer. It sounds like it could potentially be quite substantial knock-on effect if we don't go ahead with this. And ultimately, a point was made by one of the speakers about it being a financial benefit to them. I don't think that's terribly fair. I think we have to consider that we are talking about the provision of housing. We desperately need that housing. So with that in mind, I'm actually going to support this application. But on the grounds, as Councillor Bellamy said, that this is the line that's drawn. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Bird.
Thank you. Just a very small additional point. Whilst we're considering the impact on various sort of people and obviously the impact on the junction, I do wonder, again, from the representations that we've had, whether we also ought to just at least acknowledge that potentially, if we were to approve this, or if we do approve this, the actual junction itself may not show significant difference in volume, but it's quite possible that local people will choose to take alternative routes through other roads, and there could be an unintended consequence of impact on other routes and neighbours in order that where people are trying to avoid the busier junction. So I know we can't do anything about that, but I don't suppose that was covered in the modelling. But I think we just have to acknowledge that the wider area could be impacted rather than just that junction. Thank you.
Before we go to the vote, can we comment on that point, please?
Probably only to the effect that when traffic modelling is done, whilst it will drill down on those junctions, they have to be mindful that people will travel and behaviours will mean that people travel in different directions, and that's sometimes the reason why you will find that you get a junction and you look at it and go, well, so then why is that proportion of people travelling left? I mean, that will be from data and things as opposed to right, but it does look at that wider scope, and I think you're right, people will find their own way, and there will be other impacts and things, but that's why the traffic modelling does look at a bigger picture and not just the particular junctions impacted. And I've probably not articulated that very well, and if there's a highway expert, then they'd probably be a bit clearer on that, but it does look at that bigger picture. Thank you.
I apologise, having said I go to vote, I've just had one more key thought, and that is looking at comments on social media for people living in the area. What is the trigger for a bus service for that area? Because if we're putting more houses in, are we heading towards that? Is that something that, because obviously that means we are cutting down then the need for cars.
Don't know about the trigger. I think we do have lots of conversations with County about buses, and I think they are really difficult to sustain. In relation to this application, though, obviously it's just a variation to the original, so we can't put a unfortunately, we can't go backwards and put a requirement in for a bus. But it's definitely something that we are very mindful of on the other big allocations that we've got coming ahead, and we are having those conversations about whether bus routes and supporting those are something we need to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. In that case, I will now go to, sorry, Councillor Ellis. Well, last one, if it's quick, please.
Just to say that what Councillor Bellamy said about the red line and the number of houses, is that in fact a red line, or is that just what his assumption is?
I can't say that I will refuse to accept an application to be submitted. I can't say the developer will not put an application in if circumstances change. I can say that County and Highways Authority have robustly defended the 150, and they continue to do so, and we will defend that through to that appeal process. Clearly, as you've heard today, the 50s come about through discussions and finessing, so there is clearly some merit to the thought process that this is a level they are comfortable with. The developer is sat here, the developer's heard the whole debate, the developer knows how frustrating this is, so hopefully the developers will pay heed to the concerns and think very carefully should they ever be in a position to put any future applications in to vary it, because they know how difficult and challenging this is for the committee but also for local residents. So I hope that they're hearing those comments, and I'm sure they will be. Thank you.
Councillor Ellis.
So sorry, we are always told to look at evidence when we're looking at planning cases, and there is no evidence to say that the 50 is the upper limit. So I can't support this application because I just don't feel comfortable with the evidence. I feel the evidence is inconsistent, and in my job I need to look at data, and I believe every decision should be data-driven, and I'm not comfortable with this. So just, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to a vote. So, sorry. Yes, just as a reminder, we are looking at two applications. So, S24-1442 and S24-1443. No, the total between them comes to 50. Sorry, just bear with me, I'm just going to correct me.
My proposal was for the both applications, to clarify.
So, thank you for that. And Councillor Bellamy is happy to second both applications. So this is to authorise the Assistant Director Planning and Growth to approve the details submitted pursuant to Edition 24 Planning Permission S162819. Got the right. Excuse me, I'm just because we're combining. That's incorrect. No, that's the previous one. So to authorise the Assistant Director Planning and Growth to grant planning permission subject to conditions. And that applies to both of the applications. Thank you. So all those in favour, please raise your hands. That's 10 in favour. So any against, please? Two against, and Councillor Harrison wishes his vote to be recorded, and Councillor Ellis. And in fact, we did have a any abstentions? No abstentions. We had a request from the Speaker to have recorded vote, but actually that hasn't been picked up by the committee, so we'll just stop there. Thank you. So to state that application has been approved. Thank you. And we'll now have the second vote. on S241443. So if we can just, again, all those in favour, please raise your hands. And all those against? Vote will be recorded, thank you. And any abstentions? No. Thank you very much. And again, we are granting planning permission subject to two conditions. Thank you. Thank you all. Were we to be having a longer meeting at this stage, we'd call for a break, but we have one application left to consider, and so what I would like to propose is that we continue through, if everyone is happy with that. Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you very much. Just bear with me a sec to get myself in the right place. Okay, everyone, thank you very much. We're now moving then to agenda item 8 on our list, but actually in the papers it's agenda item 10. And this is application reference, sorry, can we just, thank you. Application reference S241620. And this is the alterations to trees in St Wolfram's Church grounds in Church Street, Grantham. And we have Adam Murray will be presenting this case. We have no speakers on this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so as you say, this last application is an application for works to trees protected by a tree preservation order at St Wolfram's Church. So in front of you, the plan in front of you shows trees in various different colours. It's the trees marked yellow which are subject to the application that are covered by the tree preservation order. The trees marked in blue are within the conservation area but not covered by the TPO, so subject to separate notifications for works. In terms of the schedule of works in total, as I say, it's those marked in yellow which is the full schedule of works. In essence, it is an application for annual works to remove basal shoots and remove epicormic growth. There is part of the application is for one of the trees to have a crown lift to 6 metres. These are all works that have been recommended by the Council's arboriculturalist. The crown lifting works are required for highway safety reasons. They're currently causing obstruction, and the removal of the basal shoots and the epicormic growth is required for, again, for highways obstruction removal, to improve visibility for pedestrians and to allow improved surveillance of the churchyard. As I say, proposed works are recommended in line with good arboricultural practice and in terms of highway safety. So the recommendation is to authorise the Assistant Director of Planning and Growth to grant consent for the works subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Fellows?
Can I officially propose that we go straight to the vote, Chair?
You may, unless anyone has any questions. No? Do we have a seconder in that case? Councillor Crawford beat everyone to it. So we have a proposer and we have a seconder, so that we grant permission for these works to be carried out. And in that case, if I could ask all those in favour, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you. I just have, before you go dashing off, very quick, any other business item at this point, and that is that there's going to be a joint committee looking at, which will include planning policy. It's, I believe, the Environment Committee and Rural and Communities, but all members are actually able and welcome to attend. So if any of you do have any particular interest, you are actually welcome to attend that. My understanding, I know Councillor Selby in particular will be chairing that meeting, is very happy for us to join in, given our planning knowledge and experience. Thank you.
Sorry, when is it?
You've asked that, actually, just if we can
It's,
find it.
it's 9th, Monday 9th.
9th of December at 10 o'clock. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for your time today.